So thank you, Sherry, for that warm welcome this morning. I am happy to be here with all of you today at Cathedral of Hope to celebrate the United Nations International Day of Peace for 2015. We are making this event a weekend event, and our theme is Make It Happen. Today at Cathedral of Hope, we celebrate you, women and girls, and the importance of women and girls, all of you, in the world today. Learning to overcome obstacles in life is important to creating peace in our lives. So you will be able to experience more peace while giving you greater skills and abilities to carry out your mission and purpose in your respective places of life, your personal life, your work life, and your professional life. So giving help and hope makes me happy. And experiencing hope has changed my life. Giving help and hope makes me happy by experiencing the hope that has changed me. And help without hope is hype. So hope is an acronym for helping open people's eyes, and help is tangible assistance or aid instead of deception for promotion without a greater good in mind. So my life has been my source for learning how to overcome obstacles, and it led me on a whirlwind of a trip with ups and downs. But that struggle has its benefits in helping me become the determined, persistent, strong, and resilient person that I am for today. When I asked my sister Dot, a retired nurse who lives in Valdosta, what stood out to her in my life and in my experiences that she thought I could share with you, her response to me was my resilience and my ability to overcome obstacles in life that most people would buckle under and be held captive. So my prayer is that today in this talk that you will find news that you can use for inspiration and for hope. So we are brought into this world for a reason and a season, being given abilities that will enable us to do whatever it is that we want to do in our lives. And everyone has struggles and challenges in everyday life in one way or another. So as women and girls, we are equal and different. And each of us must learn to remain positive to make the best of whatever we're given in life in order that we can create peace in our own personal lives to make life and to make the life that you have been promised. And it matters what we think about life, positively and negatively. So staying positive is empowering for all of us. As we globally prepare to participate in the United Nations Millennium Development Goals Review and Alignment in Paris in December of 2015, empowering women is necessary to building our strength and position in the world. In the follow-up documents to the General Assembly, which met in December, in December, the Secretary General Ban Ki-moon stated, and I'm going to read this, "All voices have demanded that we leave no one behind, ensuring equality, non-discrimination, equity, and inclusion at all levels. We must pay special attention to the people, groups, and countries most in need. This is the century of women." I love that. Let me say that again. This is the century of women. We will not realize our full potential if half of humanity continues to be held back. People have called for an end to all forms of gender inequality, gender-based discrimination, violence against women and against children and young boys and girls. So empowerment is important in providing us with more tools in our toolbox to help us work together and for a greater good, and in partnership with women throughout the world to work and be in solidarity and in support with prayer for our sisters. And in overcoming obstacles, many women turn to other women for that support, which is a great benefit because most women offer the gift of sharing and helping as part of our wiring. Do you believe that? Recently, I read a quote by Leandri Yancey-Vouvrin, and she said, "It doesn't matter who I used to be. All that matters is who I have become." She said that on Twitter on 3/8/2015. When I read that, I thought of my family. I remember what all I had to go through to become the person that I am today, and I laughed out loud. And you might ask why? Because it's full of a bunch of tragedy, but it's also quite a bit comical. I was born in a group as number 5 of 6 children. My 3 brothers and my 2 sisters never let me forget my position in the pecking order. So I learned early in life the importance of working within the family dynamic and learning how to get along with everybody so that I wasn't called a troublemaker. I had a brother who was a troublemaker, and I did not want to be called a troublemaker. So today I laugh at that strategy of when I needed to get out of the way of my brother Jimmy. I needed to hide out and not be the focus of unwanted attention, and it was usually from him. So our family was interactive, and it had lots of drama for the guys as well as pomp and circumstances for the girls. But not all of us were living at home all of my life. My brothers entered the military right after 18, and I found I wanted to be spending more time with my sisters and less time with my parents as humanly possible, but pretty much I think that's most teenagers. While paying attention to the obstacles in our life, in our past, present, and for our future, they tend to slow us down and stop us from achieving the things that we want to be, to say, to do, and to achieve as women and girls. And we greatly experience the confidence to overcome these, improving our resilience and stamina in the face of others. So, we greatly experience the confidence to overcome these, improving our resilience and stamina in the face of others. We are all one as humanity, and that reality keeps us connected because we care about each other. My 3 brothers and sisters and my struggles were real at home, with the most obvious being that my daddy just did not appreciate my independence or the way that I do things and my way of doing things, and I felt like I was born to express them. So I probably was born giving instructions to the nurses and the doctors in the delivery room. My father used to say, "Here comes trouble," when I entered the house. My high energy with presence that exuded confidence and knowing what to do and say, not. Truthfully, I was born with a disease. It was called hoof and mouth disease, according to my father, because whatever I thought, I said, which I confess got me into more trouble with my daddy. And it took me a long time to learn to keep my comments to myself. I wish I could say that, I wish I could tell you that my life was easy, but it wasn't. Outgoing, creative, passionate, and ever favoring the underdog. I am grateful for the expression that allowed me all of the experiences and expressions that have allowed me to find the solutions now that I must use to share with others as a professional counselor and a helping professional. And the journey has given me much for which to be thankful. So I can share my expertise, my experiences, and spreading hope to create peace for myself and for others. As a licensed professional counselor, I now know that it matters what we think. It affects our actions and our behaviors. So it is important for us to think positively so we do not fall prey to the self-defeating thinking that focuses on what we cannot do or on comparing ourselves to others. There are 6 recommendations I want to share with you today to overcome the obstacles in our lives. And first is staying focused on the positives rather than the negatives. Staying positive keeps our eyes looking up toward God, who is our help in times of trouble, rather than wallowing in self-pity and the what-ifs of our negative thinking. As a child, our mother had cancer. So she was sick all the time, and we were without her a lot of times because she often lived in the hospital year-round for treatments. But my sisters and I would travel with Daddy to from Valdosta to Montgomery, Alabama, to visit her on weekends. And we would stay in base housing where all the other families stayed, which was a lot of fun because we had time to play with others our own age, as well as spend time with Mother, because we missed her. And we were happy to make that long trip just to spend that weekend or vacation time with her. In her absence, the 6 of us managed ourselves at home because Daddy worked. We lived on a farm, and the boys helped work on the farm as well as, in jobs. But she worried about us when she wasn't with us, but she also taught us what to do and how to do it, because we've been helping her all of our lives because she had been ill all of our lives. So we learned all of the things that we need to do to take care of ourselves at home. Washing clothes, hanging them out to dry, cooking, washing dishes, cleaning house, making our own beds. And we did it all as a team. So I was in the 2nd grade, and I had long black hair, and I also learned how to wash and fix and roll my hair. I picked out my clothes. I did all I did my own laundry, or sorting the own laundry for myself, and putting those things that needed to be ironed where somebody else could iron them, because I wasn't allowed to iron before I was 10. I also learned to cook and set the table and prepare breakfast and clean up afterwards. And we developed a schedule that kind of helped us stay on track and be able to get all the things done. So these were valuable life lessons for me. I've taken care of Doris since that time. And doing so has made me more independent and self-sufficient. And we always celebrated each other's successes, and we became our own best cheerleaders, my siblings and I. So our focus was on the positive that helped us to continue living while Mother wasn't with us. Excuse me. Though we missed her when she was far away, we tried very hard to avoid the negative part of our lives that made us worry about her and the fact that we would be sad because we were afraid she wasn't going to make it. Instead, we used that to fuel ourselves and our want to do things that we knew Mother would expect us to do, and that is to keep the home functional, and the house would be clean, and when she came home, she would enjoy the house being cleaned, and she would be proud of us because she knew how hard we had worked to keep it that way, and she smiled, and that made her happy, which made us happy. And the second recommendation is to never quit. Never give up. Giving up has never been an option for me in my whole life. I was working for me and my family when we were as a young family growing up, and we had to have freedom and to feel good about what it was, the work that we were doing as children to help support the family, and choosing our activities to reward each other for getting everything done. And I worked really hard for praise from my daddy that never came. So I pretended that my mother was coming home, and just to see her smile was enough, or just to think of her smiling was enough. So what I could do I knew what I could do to keep a smile on her face. And so when any situation or obstacle presents itself in my life, I do what I can do to keep that smile on her face. When a situation in my own life occurs, I always go under, around, and over that obstacle to keep me doing what it is I do persistently and consistently, and with determination to find a solution for whatever the situation is that I need to address. So finding the answers has always been a great celebration for me. And we've done this travel, pretty much all of our lives until Mother had to have another surgery, and then she'd have to go back and stay in the hospital. Mother passed away when I was 11 years old. I had prayed and asked God to please heal her and let her stay with us. I knew she was ready to go, but I didn't want her to go. And I knew she had suffered for 15 years with the battle for cancer that just kept metastasizing to other areas until it had advanced into her liver, and she succumbed to adenocarcinoma of the liver. And that loss for me and for my siblings was huge. I still miss her today. But our daddy's way of handling my mother's death and his grief was to never talk about her again, and not allow any of us to talk about her either. And he never attended church when she was alive because he worked weekends so that my aunts and family could help take care of us, as well as he went to work early in the morning and was home by the time we came home from school each day. So when my mother passed away, we went to church. He went to church with us, and I introduced him to my Sunday school teacher, Sister Josie Paget. She was actually a really good friend of my Aunt Clara's, and she came to the house the night before Mother passed away, bringing food and getting us fed before we went to church for the youth program is on Wednesday night for us, and then the church service. But Daddy wasn't home from work yet, and that's why Aunt Clara was there to help us get ready for church and to feed us. So at that time, I didn't realize that her time was so close, so near. But before we left, Mother asked Sister Josie to come into her room where she was in her bedroom, and we were all there. Someone went to get her, and she replied, "Yes, May, I'm here," because she came down to the edge of the bed. We all heard her say, "Take care of my children." So she'd had a conversation with our mother. That's the one that I remember. Take good care of my children. Marilyn doesn't remember. She was only 8 at the time. Dot and I remembered, and I was standing beside her bed on her left side, and Marilyn was beside me, and my other sister Dot was across the bed from her at the head of the board, the headboard as well. Mother told Josie, Sister Josie, that Sister Josie told Mother that yes, May, we will take care of the children. So Sister Josie had been a Sunday school teacher for each of us. We'd known her for a long time. I would not have believed this if I hadn't been there, but I remember thinking that this was a really strange thing for my mother to say. And my Aunt Audrey took a picture of us girls with Mother. It was the last picture we had of her, and I have that picture today. I only have a few pictures of my mother and an audio recording, which I'll talk about later. So right after after we left for church, Daddy called the ambulance to come in and get my mother because she was not doing well. And during the church service, they requested prayer for my mother because they knew she wasn't doing well and wasn't expected to live. I believe that night that God let her know that all of us would be okay and that we would be taken care of. Daddy came home late that evening and had planned to leave early in the morning. I begged him to please let me go with him so that I could be with Mother even if she was going to pass away. And he said no, that was no place for me that I needed to be. So he told me, you have to go to school. I will let you know how she's doing. So at school that day, I looked at the clock between classes, and I had a really weird feeling and felt pretty strange. It was like 1:20 in the afternoon. After school, we usually go on a carpool on Fridays, but that weekend was Easter weekend, so we went on Thursday afternoon, and that's why we were late coming home from carpool that day. So I came in, we went to the Dairy Queen. Was a big treat for us, and I came home, carrying my ice cream as it was only about half filled. When we arrived, there were lots of cars out front, and my aunts knew, because they were watching for us to come, knew that the vehicle who carried us were outside, so they came outside to meet us. And I looked at them and I said, "She's gone, isn't she?" And Aunt Audrey hugged me, and I said, "Aunt Audrey, do you know if Mother died at 1:20 this afternoon?" And she said, "How did you know that, Doris?" And I told her that God had given me that because Daddy wouldn't let me go. God let me know. And I just cried. And she ushered me inside where all of our family was gathered to receive us. My daughter Laura was working on a roots project in school, and this is some years later. She came into my room one morning before school, and she asked me about Mother, and she said it was an assignment for her to learn more about the family member that she didn't know, and she wanted to ask me some questions about my mother. So Laura and Kristen had visited with me all their lives since Laura was 18 months old, to put flowers on Mother's grave and to take pictures of both Mother's and Daddy's grave. But one of the 5 questions she asked me was, "How old were you when you lost your mother?" And I told her I was 11, Laura's age then. And then she asked, "How old was Aunt Marilyn?" And I told her that I was 11 years old and Aunt Marilyn is 3 years younger, so how old is Aunt Marilyn? She said 8. I said, "That's right." So then she said, and she really looked puzzled. and asked how old my mother was when she died. And I thought for a minute, and I had to calculate that in my head. And I told her how old she was. And she realized with me that I was the same age as my mother at her death. And I had never put those questions together until that day. And Laura looked up at me and she said, "Mother, I cannot imagine losing you." And then she hugged me. Well, I started crying, and I didn't stop for 3 weeks. It was then that I realized that I had never dealt with my mother's death and that I needed to do so. So I called a friend that day who is a psychiatrist, and he gave me the name of a psychologist, female psychologist that he knows, that's a therapist. And I called her, and I took the time to meet with her and to deal with my grief, as we all must do, to deal with the grief, because it will revisit us every year or ever so often whenever things happen in our lives that remind us of that circumstance. So, sorry. I processed the hidden grief that I would have processed if my father had allowed us, each of us, to share our grief with him and each other. And even today, I have siblings that haven't dealt with the death of our mother. The third recommendation I want to give to you is challenge yourself to try new things each day. For me, this was life. While dealing with my own grief, my flexibility is my namesake. It's my middle name, because I just learned to roll with the flow. And when I was dealing with my grief with mother, my brother Don called, and we talked about it. Sorry. He closed our conversation that day by telling me he was going to send me something. I had talked to him about a poem that I kept coming into my head that I had not, I couldn't put all the words together. I had some of them, and I told him what those were. So he told me he was going to be sending me something. So in a few days, I received a package, which I opened, finding an audio tape that letting me know that it was recorded in the summer of 1957. I was in the second grade, and that was the year that we moved to Valdosta. So I transcribed the recording on from the 33 record that he had made when he came with a buddy home from the military that summer. But this was in the 90s. This was in 98. So I transcribed that poem, and it was a poem that I thought Mother wrote. She recited on this recording. And I have been reciting that poem for as long as I could remember. I was probably in my 20s, but I couldn't put in, because I was dealing with grief, I couldn't put those words together anymore. And I was so thankful, because I only have 3 pictures of my mother in that video recording, which is a true gift for me. However, I found recently that she didn't write it. While I was searching for a similar quote for one of my assignments in my Master's in Organizational Leadership, I found the completed poem, which is a precious gift to me now, because I know she read it and she learned it too. And I've shared it with my siblings, and I've cited it in my references here, and you may read it from its original source that's in my references. And I've made a copy for this poem at the registration as a gift for you today. So I just think it's a huge blessing, and I think that comes from God, to see those circumstances in which that took place. So though I didn't cry about finding the resource that wasn't my mother's, I was happy. I did cry, but I didn't cry out of sorrow. I cried tears of happiness. It was tears of joy, because I learned much more about my mother that she read it in an old almanac. She was a farmer's wife who had joined in marriage to a military man who went off to war. And my older siblings were gone, were at home with Mother while Daddy was gone. But when we were at home, my sisters and I were born after the war ended. And so finding this gem was a beautiful gift for me, and I love to hear her recite it. And now I can read it on the iPad. It makes me smile in remembrance of my mother. And someone I know just recently lives in North Carolina posted while I was writing this poem, while I was writing this presentation, he wrote, I mentioned to you the coincidence. While I was looking for it, another quote I found that stood out to me was, I believe coincidences are those times when God chooses to give us a blessing and remains anonymous. And I found this as a reference. I found it on Jewish Asia Purim, which is a Jewish holiday on March the 12th of this year. And I thought it was such a blessing, because this is Lenten season, and for me, I've given up Facebook for Lent, but it's amazing to me how the intricate times in our lives are evidences of the providential hand of God in our lives. And I just thought that was such a blessing, because I truly do believe that coincidences are those times when God chooses to give us a blessing and remains anonymous. I just couldn't remember the source, so I found it on the Jewish Asia Purim site. So my sisters and I have relatives, when my father died, that we went to give my father a break. And during that time, I stayed with my Uncle Oscar and Aunt Aunt Brennis in Atlanta, Georgia, on post housing, and I had the best time. I've always been around a large family, and I had my own room. It was just like a 5-star hotel for me. I had so much fun because I enjoyed being around my family who had smaller children, and I got to play with them, as well as it was a difficult time for me and a time for me to get away, as it was my siblings. But the sorrow was overwhelming until you're distracted by it. So I was very thankful for each of us to have the opportunity to go somewhere and celebrate with families, our family, our whole family. And even though we lost a member of ours. So while we were gone, Daddy and Sister Josie dated after I introduced Daddy to her at church, and attended church together. And they all met me at the train when I returned to Valdosta. So growing up, I was glad that Daddy met someone. I was the one who most often Daddy placed in charge. He could depend on me to do the things that he needed to get done without waiting, until they got finished, basically. And we began seeing her family often so that we could get to know them. And 6 months later they married, and we moved to another place with then the 5 of us, because Daddy and Mother and 4 of us kids. She had a brother, but that brother went to live with siblings and my mother's sister in Florida that was only about 30 minutes from us. So that made us, her 5 and his 6 made us, me, number 10 of 11 kids. So thankfully, we didn't live all together. We had one other sibling, Lynn, who was Mother Josie's daughter, who lived with us. And I told you flexibility is my namesake, and it fits my personality. I just learned how to roll with the flow. Everything was new and challenging, and I had been doing this all of my life, so I continued to be active in church and school and home, helping to do whatever I was needed to do to get the work shared. So when Daddy married Josie, she did most of the cooking, and they both cooked and enjoyed it. So Daddy managed the washing, and we shared the housework and the schedule in the kitchen. You know, washing and drying and putting away the dishes and setting the table and clearing them off for whoever was going to be finishing the job. So we rotated that off and on, pairing with a sibling every week. And that gave us more time to do homework as well as play outside with our friends and to get to know the neighborhood friends. And we had a schedule for cleaning also on Saturday morning that got the rest of it done. Our home was so small, I enjoyed being outside. And I loved to keep the yard cleared and clean of debris so that when my friends came over to hang out, we would hang out outside, and while I worked they talked to me. So I enjoyed having someone with me who could talk to me about how I felt, and because they listened, because they knew my daddy was harder on me and didn't cut me any slack at all. And because I had a good support system at school, at church, and with friends, I was able to talk about how I felt and share some of my loss with my mother. Doing so helped me to cope at that time, and I was only 12. I was in middle school. So I needed to make some sense of it, but that was all I used, and the rest I just buried for a later date. So the fourth thing I want to share with you in obstacles to your life that can help to give you peace is smile. There's a song I used to sing with my mother. So let the sun shine in, take it with a grin. Smilers never lose and frowners never win. So let the sun shine in, take it with a grin. Open up your heart and let the sun shine in. Did you know that it takes more muscles to frown than it does to smile? Now there's a little bit of dental hygiene information I can throw at you. But Mother Teresa said, every time you smile at someone, it's an action of love. A gift that a person gives, a gift to a person, a beautiful thing. But seriously, it takes more energy to frown than it does to smile. And frowning makes more wrinkles in our aging faces, ladies. So that was enough for me to learn to smile. It often carries with it a message that many people need to hear over and over. Something beautiful. It's also another quote that I found was William Arthur Ward said, "A warm smile is a universal sign of kindness." So that is that message that others need to hear over and over. And peace begins with a smile, according to Mother Teresa. So a smile goes a long way, and happiness changes things. And one benefit of that is that it attracts others to us. And that makes me think of my mother-in-law, of my mother and my mother-in-law. My daddy had a heart attack 6 months after Mother Josie and he married. So it was a difficult time and a slow recovery, and he would never work again. So Mother had to go to work in a local bag factory as a seamstress to earn enough money for us to survive, and it took a while before my father's military retirement checks and Social Security started, because he was under 65. He was 60. And it was almost 2 years. So she worked to support all of us. And thankfully we had friends and a church and neighbors who also came to to provide some loving care. And we all worked. I babysat as well as helped people in the neighborhood and running errands, cleaning, and doing odd jobs, usually in somebody's yard. And my other three sisters, my other two sisters, Marilyn was only 9 years old, so she didn't do a whole lot. And I would often go to meet those neighbors in the neighborhood because we had moved to this new place, I would go out and introduce myself in the neighborhood and help them with things. Even before this happened, I would get them something to eat, or I would do chores inside the house that they could no longer manage. And at 12, I couldn't get a full-time job. I didn't have a permit, and I wasn't old enough. But I really enjoyed being around my neighbors and helping those, especially some of them who had disabilities, that I could be of help to. And I never charged anyone, but some paid me and nothing or little, and others paid me enough to keep my needs met. So helping them gave me a chance to keep my mind off of me and my sorrows and be attentive to the needs of others. And that was a great blessing for me. So many asked about my family and my mother while I was there, and I could share my loss with them as well, and find great listeners who also helped me. And I made great friends and with the adults over my street. Over the years, I attended so many family reunions and funerals of these wonderful people that were my neighbors when I was growing up. And they became my support system. And the things I did for them seemed not like a job. It was a gift to both of us. So life has a way of educating us in the realities that it offers a mixture of sorrow and happiness. But education is the key to happiness that brings us smiles and helps us through our fears. Sometimes we feel threatened in different uncertainties, and as a child I did feel uncertain about my daddy not, having a heart attack, and he was going to die as well. So underlying uncertainty is the fear of the unknown. But awareness opens our mind to new information that makes us a better person and gives us a different perspective. And, people don't know what they don't know until they know it. And my father was old-schooled, and I learned to forgive my father, which was a huge blessing for me, because I didn't hang on to the hurt and stay mad at him for not recognizing our needs to talk about mother, because he didn't know what he didn't know. And since I've learned most of the things, my life lessons in tragedies, I'm a realist, and I tend to pay attention to the fact that what we don't know can hurt us, and keeping our antenna up for beneficial ways in preparation for what may lie ahead. I recommend the present. That's why it's called the gift. Each day, in the fifth recommendation I want to share with you, each day we must check in with ourselves and ask ourselves, are you happy? As a counselor, my passion is in helping people, and I'm happiest when I help others. So I love what I do, and I enjoy people, and I'm energized by people. And my skills are bringing awareness to others that they might not do or say or win more friends or influence more people. And that's pretty much where I was as a hurting adolescent. Early in my career, I had a dentist that I worked with, Dr. Swindle, gave me 2 books that were pivotal in Doris changing some of her ways. The first one he gave to me. He gave me the book and he said, you need to read this. Not, I have a book I think you will enjoy, Doris. It was, no, you need to read this. That book is so worn now. It's one of my favorites, and the information in it greatly has impacted and changed my life. And change occurs over time and situations. It doesn't occur all at once. But the second book that he gave me was The Go-Getter, and it's by Peter B. Kine. And he told me, you might as well read this book, but I have to tell you, when I was reading it, it felt like I was reading about you. I was 17 years old at the time. And in the foreword to this book, Dave Ramsey wrote. This classic book teaches a critical success principle. Success in any area of your life requires that you decide that you will not be denied from reaching your goal. And this includes your personal, professional, and work life. So as women today, our internal self has a caring focus, and we're bent to help. And we think about others more than most men. So it's important for us to help educate men, the men in our life, how to understand us, where we're coming from, and something about our needs. And that includes our husbands, our spouses, or our aunts and uncles, or our parents, in what they do to help the relationship that we have with anyone, to help better understand women. And our personhood is affected by both genetics, heredity, environment, social and cultural context that we live and work in, and we're born into. So finding that balance, we need a balance in our lives in doing what you love and want to do as your work could be the key for making you happy. So it's important to choose wisely. So we can all help ourselves and others by giving them the benefit of the doubt and caring enough to show kindness that goes a long way. And I feel like that's what I was doing with my daddy and my brother Jimmy, who is, was so mean to me when I was a child. Mother Teresa says, kindness goes a long way. We can all do great things. We can't all do great things, but we can all do things in a great way. And I remember that scripture, that saying from a long time ago, was given to me in a bookmarker by a nurse that I was working with when I was at Medical College of Georgia as a district dental hygienist. Mother Teresa also says, being kind is a skill that applies here in learning better how we relate to others. So my joy is increased in giving others hope and in helping them so that they can create peace for themselves through learning how to overcome obstacles in their lives for themselves and for us. And I seek to certify as a counselor in diversity and inclusion as a focus also, so that I can continue to learn about other areas that I'm not as familiar with, but I would like to meet any individual family needs every day so that I can help whatever the diversity or difference is. And that includes working with people with disabilities. They also suffer and struggle through finding suitable resources, as well as learning how to manage their daily living skills. So tell me, what gives you hope? The answer to that question will help you find a key to happiness. Leandri Jansen Varin said, if you're searching for that one person who will change your life, you can take a good look in the mirror. And my first efforts were directed toward me. I had a lot of changing to do early in my life, and I experienced a lot of lost relationships due to my actions. So having learned these people skills and how to apply them in situations that helps me be a more effective helper for others with their needs is a true blessing for me. My work does not seem like a job for me. As humans and as women, we only have the power and the capacity to change ourselves when we consider how we seek to help someone else who might not be ready for needed change. And timing is everything when we approach somebody that might not need to be changed. At the time Dr. Swindle gave me that book, I needed to be changed. I didn't like what he said, but I needed to change, and that timing was perfect. But it's also important for us to use tact as a very important way of showing that we care enough to bring a message to somebody that needs to hear the message we're giving. And there are many ways to solve a problem, and others respect us more if we give them options to go through. It's kind of like giving, like a teenager, giving people options is the only way to let them have enough rope to try to change safely. And it gives having someone to mentor with them also helps them to have somebody to talk to when they come up with questions, which is what I do. So Pablo Picasso wrote a quote that's on my computer, and every time I open my computer I view it. It's the title, and then the quote is, "The meaning of life is to find your gift, and the purpose in life is to give it away." I feel like that's what I'm doing now. In this way, I can be happy and fulfilled in my life's work as a counselor, and whatever God wants me to do and wherever God leads me, I will go. But my focus is helping to empower women actively and in reality. The UN Secretary Ban Ki-moon, in remarks at the opening commission of the Status on Women in New York on May 9th of this year, said, "Too often leaders have used women to advance their own power. We must use our power to advance women." And I think that's a lead-in to my sixth recommendation to you, and that is avoiding making comparison between yourself and others. There is a lot of difference in us and other people and other cultures and other countries. And this avoidance helps you see, not making any comparison between us, helps you see yourself as in a confident light, and encourages you to keep moving forward toward your goals and aspirations as we make it for ourselves. So making time to celebrate the little and the big accomplishments every day, I think, is really important. They also help you place your set goals for yourself that you might complete in less time or with additional time compared to others. But I think it gives you pause to consider that. However, time is not the important part. Your self-confidence and the way toward completion of your goals is what makes you feel the most important. Completion of goals is an empowering concept, and these actions contribute to your well-being. So the circumstances and situations in my life, the obstacles, were difficult for me to navigate through in any ways. For instance, I now have a disability in my hands that prevents me from being able to write a check, sign my name. I can't open a jar. I can't open some doors. I can't open my car sometimes. And I deal with this in my writing and professionally by using a software that's called Dragon Naturally Speaking. That's a speech-to-text software that I dictate everything that I want to say on my computer, and it types for me, and then I have to dictate. So I have to be careful about how I dictate. And I remember that my mother suffered her own personal loss in her life with the cancer that she had for 15 years, yet she remained positive. And I never heard my mother complain or compare herself to anyone else. She was always so grateful for all that she had, and especially for the love and care that she gave and received from her children. Though it has been sad for me to write and share this with you today, I hope you see that my mother has also been an inspiration for me my whole life, and that I only had her for 11 years, and all that I am and is through the love gifts that she gave me in her prayers for her daughters. And in living, she instilled in me at a very young age to know the Lord. I love the Lord then, and I love the Lord now. I've read my Bible all my life as she taught me, and sorry. Mother helped me learn the 66 books of the Bible. I used to remember as a child going in her room and besides singing to her, I read to her. And she helped me learn the 66 books of the Bible when I was in 3rd grade. And I had to recite those to my minister so that I could receive as a gift my first Bible. So I earned my first Bible, but I bought the rest for myself. A large collection that I have in every translation. So when I dealt with my mother's death in 1998, when my daughter walked into my room that day, I asked my mother, Josie, how she felt when my mother asked her that evening before her death if she would take care of her children. And she remembered it, and she said that it felt strange when she told her that, to take care of my children. But she said she thought at first that she meant as a woman of the church, and because she'd been a Sunday school teacher to us children. And after a few dates with her daddy, she knew it was God's intervention, that she loved my daddy, and and all of us too. And I watched my father, I watched him change when he married Mother Josie. He went to church and became a Christian and started acting like the father he should have acted when I was a child. But I also watched him changed because he became a Christian as well. So the Lord has always been my rock and my refuge, a very present help in time of trouble, according to Psalms 18:2. He's my true guide and friend, shelters me through so much, and lets me rest in the arms of my Lord. One of my favorite scriptures is Psalms 91. He who dwells in the shelter of the Most High will rest in the shadow of the Almighty. I have lived in God's shadow my whole life, and I rest in His divine care and purpose. And my second favorite scripture is, for He shall command His angels charge over thee to guide you in all your ways. And that's Psalms 91:11. This is my scripture from my walk to Emmaus. The walk here at our church, Cathedral of Hope, we call the walk. But each of us has God's presence. We have His protection, we have His provision, and we have His providential hand at work in the very fabric of our lives. So our sorrows, though we may have them, do not last. God removes our sorrows and gives us hope and joy for each and every day, and a gift to be shared, a peace that passes all our own understanding. Hope deferred makes the heart sick, but a longing fulfilled is the tree of life, according to Proverbs 13. And our longing for peace, one that passes our own understanding and keeps our hearts and minds through Jesus, comes from Philippians 4:8. So God is my hope and my heart, and it is my hope that keeps this hope that keeps each of us going each day. We live with the grace, love, and mercy bestowed on all of us today through God our Father, Mother, and Holy Spirit. And as King's kids, it is no secret. As a King's kid, it's no secret what God has done for me and my life and my family's, and it's no secret that what God can do in yours. That is a song that I have also listed on my reference sheet for you. It's one that I learned and sang in church with my mother. And how the sun shines, His sunshine into my heart, and gives me the hope to provide some tools for your toolbox today, providing you with hope while learning to overcome the obstacles of life and some life skills to go with it. I am grateful for what I have in peace today, so that I can enjoy all my tomorrows. But Mother's Life gives me an example for those 6 recommendations I talked about with you. Overcoming obstacles in life, she was my example. A positive attitude, that never giving up or quitting is important. She was always willing to try something new, to fight her cancer, and always smiling in spite of her circumstances. And I never heard her complain or compare herself to others. Her joy was in the Lord, and she was my example of life to pattern and exemplify. My mother was always happy. Even when she was dying, she had a smile on her face. The last time I saw her, that's what I remember, is that smile. So I remembered that night because I find solace in knowing that she had peace to know that we would all be taken care of by God's grace, meeting all of our needs, and that these blessings make me more grateful for who she was and grateful for the blessings she loved and enjoyed through her children, who loved and appreciated her, and that she is free today from that cancerous body, enjoying the glorious body she has in heaven now, in heaven. And she's been my inspiration that has opened my eyes to her faith and hope in God, which changed my life. I knew where she was going, and that legacy she has given me to live each life in abundance and blessing and be grateful for all we had, I can share with you and others today. My prayer is that God will richly bless you, each woman here and girl here today, as you continue to enjoy the rest of your planned weekend of speakers and activities and fellowship. Thank you for the opportunity to share my heart with you, and thank you for your attention. And I look forward to spending time the remainder of this weekend celebrating all of you.